How's it going, guys? Welcome back to another video. Today we are looking at Teamfight callouts for Bay 5, Chop Shop, Bowl, and Equator. I'm only doing those four for now because they're the most popular maps. Only 16% of you guys are subscribed that watched the last video. I appreciate you guys a ton, but please go ahead and like and subscribe if you found this video useful at all. It really helps me out a lot. Again, I'll be using arena-esports.com. That will be in the description down below. I'm going to use this as reference, but some of the callouts I'm actually going to change based off of what I typically use and better callouts than this where this is spawn office. I just call this something like hut because it's much easier to describe. We're going to start with Chop Shop first and work our way down the list. Still a little surprised that they haven't labeled these spawns. I just call this inside spawn, and then the spawn on the opposite side of the map over there is outside, so I call it outside spawn. Coming over to the left side here, we have pit. I call this pit. People call this hell, or on this website it says hell or under heaven. I don't call this hell. I call this square area here pit, as do a lot of other people. Then underneath here is hell, which makes a lot more sense. Just this kind of, rectangular area here. Coming back over here, you can call this heaven stairs, and you can call this heaven up top here. I call it rafters as well, but heaven makes a little bit more sense, calling this entire area heaven, and heaven stairs, as we see on the website here. Heaven stairs for each staircase. This is called blue right here, this blue car. So if somebody's on top of blue or under blue, you can make that call out. Starting from outside spawn this time. Again, we're going to go to this right side here through hut. What I call hut is just a little hut. And coming out through here, we have 90 or shark. I don't know why people call it shark here. Usually I call this Jeep. I would recommend calling it Jeep, just because it makes a lot more sense. This is called white van. And then over on this side, we have short, this short right here, which makes a lot of sense. This is called arches right here. You could even call this 40 if you wanted to, because you have that 40 symbol. I usually just call it SUV on site because it's the only SUV that's on site. Then we have the car on site as well. And then this is called point in the middle, obviously. It looks like the website calls this back spot lifts. I call it backsite. Backsite makes a lot more sense because it's the only point where you're pretty much sitting against the back of a wall. Lifts is a much quicker call out, and I think it's a better call out. So I would just stick with lifts. And in this area right here, we have mid. You could also call it cards if you wanted to. Going through the right side of the inside spawn, we have bus. This entire back area is just called bus. This is called office because it's a little office area. This I think is called something spawn jump. The reason it's called spawn jump is because you can get up top here and you can see into the enemy spawn from outside spawn. This says it's called black van or G-Wagon. I would just call this, I'd call this office Jeep. Over here, we have this lane leading to connector. So this is called mid lane. And then we have the way to the right over here. This is labeled as yellow bus and like paint. You could also call it graffiti if you wanted to. I call it garage because it's the only little garage you can get into. And then we have white car. Looks like this is called long over here. Long for this area. That's pretty much it for Chop Shop. It's a very small map. I would recommend calling this pit, like I said before, just because this kind of little square area here is worth its own call out. And next up, we got Equator. Equator is a bit of it's a slightly larger map than Chop Shop, but it's still very straightforward. There's not like a ton of call outs that are in this map. Starting on this bottom left corner of the map here, it says Buedo or Budio, mostly because of this store here. I think it's kind of excessive. I think you can just call it green corner. And then this is green esky or green escalator. Every point that has escalator, people also call esky for short. Going to the right over here from green corner, we have construction. You can also call it attic if you want, but people always call this area construction here on the side. As you can see here, it's pretty much this entire lane. Some people call this, looks like it's called Berlin here. You could also call this construction wall. And then this is called fridge, I guess because of the refrigerator right there. I think that is a good call out, fridge or headshot, because people usually can only see your head when you're peeking over here. Back over here where construction is, you have this kind of area here which is called couch, and then this is tech light, and then this is tech light esky right here, or tech light escalator, this whole area over here. And over here you can see arch, which is again this arch leading right here. If you're at like any part in the map and you're kind of around this area, I usually just call it construction side. But I just call it construction side because people know typically what side it's on. And leading over here, we have the ATMs in the middle, which is the thing that kind of stands out the most here. And I call this ATM side. So construction side and ATM side. Back on construction side, you have these sandbags leading up to the bus. Some people call this cubby, it looks like. This is called cubby. Then we have bus. You could just call this bus as well. This is called garden in the middle here. This area right here. You can't actually go into garden, but you can't get into like the fountain on the other side. So across from Tech Light, we have KFC, and this is, you can kind of hear people on wood when they're in KFC. KFC Esky or KFC Escalator. And we have over here ATM. Looks like this is called Pink on this side here. I think Pink is really good though. It's a very easy call out. Then we have the Tarbank bus. We call it just white van, or it's called just van here. We have this kind of little wood area here. It is called Cage. I call it wood. Cage works too, I guess. And this is called Crates over here. Crates makes a lot of sense. This entire front part here is called Crates in this little area. And then over here, it's up to you if you want to call it like Skull or something. I think Skull is a pretty good call out because I see people sitting in this corner all the time. And then this is called Med over here, or the Tar Med spot. Now this is called Dumpster. I would change the name of this to Double because it's two ATMs stacked on top of each other. There used to be a dumpster. This is like a while ago, a few months ago. There used to be a dumpster here instead of these kind of double stacked ATMs. You could jump on top of it, but they obviously removed it. You can't jump on top of these anymore. It looks like this is labeled as tryhard. I really don't know why because it doesn't say tryhard, so it doesn't really make any sense. I'll just call it maybe toilet side or toilet corner, and then toilet esky. Yep, this is called fountain here. Makes a lot of sense. I would also call it fountain. There used to be stairs leading up to these top towers up here. It looks like this interactive map's a little outdated because it still has the stairs leading up there. This is called cut in the middle here. And obviously we have mid in the middle of the map. And this is called tower up here, or top. You get up top here. You are actually able to still get up to these spots. I really don't know if it was intended for team fight, but you can still get up top here if you do a few jumps. I do like this call out called cut, or you could call it split because it kind of splits into two areas here. That's pretty much it. Again, you could call this try hard if you want to. I'm probably just going to end up calling it toilet corner. And then we have green corner, we have green escalator, toilet escalator, tech light esky, and then you have KFC and KFC esky over there. Construction side, and then ATM side on the opposite side. Moving on to Bowl, it's a much bigger map. There's a lot more callouts because you have towers that you have to worry about, but I'll break everything down for you guys. Starting from this spawn in the bottom left corner here, we're going over to med side or med tent area. This is called elbow because it kind of connects here both to A site and then to med tent over here. Can't go up these. This is a med ramp. Ramp leads up into, usually people call this med tent, being inside here. Second floor med is way too long of a call out. So we call this inside typically med tent. Coming out here, we have catwalk. Usually we call this catwalk on this spot here. Then you have wood ramp leading up here, wood ramp. And then you can call this med ramp as well. Usually we call both med ramp. And then in the middle here, you have ambulance. You can call this back area blue fence if you want to. But usually we just call this back ambulance or ambulance area. I don't know why people would call this Tetris. That makes no sense. I would just call it wood ramp. It's the same syllables. And then we call this whole area gen. Use last seen gen, wood ramp, and then green crate. This is a little connector. Now we're at the top right of the map here, going through this APC. This is called fuel right here. This is called B short is what it says on the map right here. But I would just call this truck. Nobody calls this B short. I would call this little spot here truck. This is called square in Blast Gang, so I would continue to call this area square here. And then this is tower. Depending on what spawn you start in, you either call it our tower or their tower. It alternates every round. I always just call this the corresponding tower. Under the heli here, this is called tail because it's the tail of the heli. And then I would call this platform here A plat because that's what it's called in Blast Gang. We have this inside here, obviously heli. This is just inside heli. And then this is B plat because it's the platform that's closest to B. Coming back outside of the heli, we have A site here, and we have this box on this side. I call this box, all the time I call this L box, because it's just kind of shaped like an L. It's labeled something really silly here, which is honey. That's such a stupid call out. I would just call it L box, because again, it's shaped like an L. This is obviously A site. This is called A box there, or A boxes for all these concrete boxes on the side. And this is called A truck. I would just still call this A site, but it makes no sense to try to call this out. This is usually called called short. You can call this A short if you want to, and then A long right here. Going this way. Okay, cool. They do have that labeled as short and long. That's what it's called in Blast Gang. We have the tower in the back up there. We have this little kind of cubby walkthrough here, which is called cubby. Awesome. And then we have, this is called 90. It's not actual 90-degree angle, but it's not a big deal. I'd still continue to call this 90 going into office here. In office, we have office fan on the spot right here. And then we have bridge, which is the spot leading up above. Some people call this, this is stairs. And then some people call this upper office. I usually call it upper office, second floor office. That all works. Then you have B long, which is this back area over here. This entire area. This isn't labeled, but I would just call this wood ramp to office or office ramp. And then we have this connector here, which is called tunnel, or orange is also what it's called because of the orange crate above. This is called cargo right here. I'm not sure why. This is called stacks right here. This little kind of box here. Stacks is a very popular call out, so make sure you kind of know that one. We have the nose of the heli up front. This area is called nose. Again, this is kind of outside office if you want to call it that. And then this is the nose. Then we have B site, and then B box or B boxes, and then this is B truck right there. Or you could call this green truck if you want to. This is called A short or med short. I would recommend just calling this A short, and then I would call this entire kind of area here, leading all the way along this side, A main. I would just call it A main. And that is pretty much it for Bull. We're going to move on to the last map, Bay 5. Bay 5 isn't necessarily like super huge, but it is filled with a bunch of spots for callouts. We have the warehouse spawn in this big warehouse, and then we have the opposite spawn, like the brick warehouse on the other side. Starting from this big warehouse, this is called garage here, in this kind of spot right here. This is garage. This is usually called catwalk on this kind of lane going this way. We have this spot to the right here. This is, I call this elbow on this spot here. And then this leads to the wood platform. And I call this entire area here with all these crates, I call it Crate City. You can call this wood cat or catwalk if you want on this spot right here. You could also just call it wood simply. There's not a lot of wood spots. There's another wood ramp leading up to this blue crate. There's a little call out for each little shipping container that's around here, but I would just call it Crate City, this entire area Crate City. And then I would call this spot Sandwich, where these crates are sandwiched in between one another right here. It looks like it's called Long, but I would just call it Alley on this side over here. If you want to be more specific, you can call this Columns because of the columns for this kind of covered area. Call this area Columns, and then Alley leading along here. You could call it long if you wanted to. Usually back over here, I would call this tire truck. And usually the truck on the opposite side, I would call this fence truck because they're both white trucks, unfortunately. But this truck has fences on it where the other one has tires on it. Coming from the brick spawn here, I have an area to the right here called toilets. Toilets right here, porta potties, whatever you want to call it. I head over here this way. I call this mesh because of the mesh awning here, the mesh overhang. This says that it's called elbow, but I would not call this elbow. I would just call this area mesh. Then again, we have the tire truck right here, leading around this side. We have, this is called underpass right here. I don't know why it's called glass, so because of the glass windows here. I would just call this underpass. This is usually called Tetris right here, this spot, leading up. And then this is called Xbox, this area right here. This is called dumpster, the thing I'm standing on. You can go inside of it. And this over here is called fire escape. The stairs leading up there. It's labeled as stairs, but I would just call it fire escape. This is called smuggle right here. This big box. Smuggle, because you can hide inside of here. You could call it freezer, but I would not call it freezer. Doesn't make any sense because there's no freezers here. I would just call this smuggle, and then I would call this smuggle box. Leading to the right over here. I don't think this really has a call out, this kind of box. There's not a lot of people hide in here. This is called Jeep though, police Jeep if you wanted. And this is Heaven ramp, leading up into Heaven here. This is just top Heaven. We have, again, leading out from another Heaven ramp to Forklift. And this is called Banana here on this corner. Underneath Heaven, obviously, we have Hell right here. This is underneath Heaven. For the big warehouse spawn, we go to the left here. We have, this is called Fire Truck. We have Red Crate. This is called Headshot right here. This ramp leading up here. Headshot. Because you can only see people's heads typically. To our right, we have Elbow. I call this Toxic, this crate. called toxic crate. This is called con box. This is also called parkour. I call it con box because it's the connector boxes. People often call it parkour though. And then we have connector here. Yeah, that's why this is called connector box. Connector leads into fuel. This entire big area here is called fuel. This is called green, or slanted green if you want to call it that. I just call it green. You can have, this is also heaven plat. I'm going to call this plat or heaven plat. Underneath here, this is called rat. This spot here. There's only rats waiting in that spot for people. And again, that's why we call this smuggle, because people can kind of hide back here in this spot. We have the point, the only point on the site. This is called slant, this box here. It's a very common call out. Slant for this box. And this is called white crate, or white with this box right here. We just have mid. This entire area is mid. This is called cubby down below here. This kind of area right here, this cubby. And then this spot is called trailer. This entire spot here. That's pretty much it for Bay 5, you guys. Hopefully this video has helped you guys out. If you guys think that I missed any of the callouts, or if you'd like to see another one of the maps, just make sure you comment down below to let me know. But I'll see you guys in the next video. Have a good one.